There's no science behind it, there's no adequation between anybody, it's, the fact is that's the easiest way.
So like this shows,
So in 16, my guys are supposed to be making, my detention staff are supposed to be making 1687, based upon their wage matrix that Dick Larson. Now we're at 1503, is what they're saying we're supposed to be making.
this is 1403 to 1741.
That's, 1403 is where they're starting at,
Okay.
because they got locked in on the union contract.
Yeah, so like this one has a number of people that are well over 100%. Like victim witness advocates 117. That doesn't jive at all with the numbers that we previously had. Or detention officer 103%. Deputy sheriff. So I guess one thing, I think hopefully we're all clear on this, so the deputy sheriff 111 to 113%. So the county can't depart from the statutory framework of how those deputies' salaries and wages are. They're based on the sheriff's salary by statute. So I think we're all tracking on that.
Yeah, that is just showing what people make. Again, it's a transparency document, so the public is aware, staff is aware, supervisors are aware. It in no way overshoots or does anything with MCA.
And what counties were used for this comparison? You want this?
I don't think it's worth the paper it's written on, but that's just my
Do you guys know what counties were used for that?
Not off the top of my head.
Were
We
they
read it
different?
during the meeting last week.
Were they different from the 2016 study?
No, there's the same ones, Corey. It's just an update. It's not a reconfiguration. That's what we were talking about is we should have an in-depth review of it probably every 4 to 6 years, but not every year. It's not necessary, and
So-
that's what HR has taught our folks in the trainings that they go to, is how to kind of look at that and update on an annual basis. They go to all kinds of different HR and budgetary trainings. This is part of their training. It is definitely within their scope of work, within their job description, and within the qualifications for the jobs that we pay them to do.
So if I go upstairs right now and ask her, she's gonna say that she has gone to training on how to do wage matrix? Is that what you're telling me? Please tell me, because you know what? I am right here about just losing it completely on you. If you're saying that you're not
Mr.
changing your
Chairman,
wage,
I asked for civility in this
you can
meeting.
ask whatever you
Our
want.
sheriff's out of control.
the sheriff's not. But I mean, if you're saying you're gonna use the wage matrix for 4 to 6 years, then you gotta stay with it. You can't go and change it. You do not have an approved wage matrix for 16, 17 based off any calculations. You have no approved 17, 18. You have nothing up until this point. So if you're gonna sit here and continue to lie to me, we're gonna have some serious problems. No, that's all there is
You know what?
to
You
it.
asked for an answer, I'm gonna give you one.
I didn't ask you for anything.
You
I'm talking to
demanded
the
it.
chairman. You're not the chair.
Well, when I
Yes.
have a problem with that, because Larson gave us, our accounting people, the formula to adjust this yearly. Now, if.
It hasn't been done, Mr. Chairman. That's the point I'm
It
getting
just
at.
got done.
Well, great.
It's right
Too
here.
late. You went 2 years without doing it, so now it's too late. You can't do it now. You're trying to fact something because you know that there's no fiscal way that you can afford to give my staff the market wage adjustment that they deserve because you held it back from them for 3 damn years because of a union contract. And that's exactly what's trying to be implemented today. Now, if anybody wants to argue with me, let's go outside and let's argue.
Here's a question I don't understand. Basic question. 2016, we got those numbers. None of those positions there were over 100%. None of them. And if we're doing a comparison now, using the same counties, same methodology, how can all those positions be over 100%? The only way that can happen is if all those other counties drop their wages, and we know that didn't happen. That, I don't understand the methodology for that outcome to be achieved. That's a basic question that I think we need to dig into.
I don't
Against
think
that
that's
Larson
accurate.
investigation or investigations, at that time 16, and I'm still against it.
We have the original paperwork, and I don't have it actually in the columns, we can do the math. I haven't marked up my book, but I don't think that's accurate, Corey, so we'll have to get into that, and we can actually provide you the list.
Okay, so I would ask that
He
you
had,
not, sorry,
well, I think we have to do this one. We can go back and look at 2 years ago to clarify that we do have some, or did have some that were over 100%. But I still think we need to adopt this for this year because we are in the budget process, we're at the end of it, we're in negotiations, and we need to make sure that we're all on the same document. We can't have any more of this, one department on a document that's totally different than the one everybody else is using. We've got to get everybody on the same official document. This is just housekeeping. It was specifically requested that we do this by the accounting department for their clarity, and I think for their ease of life, and for ours, we need to go ahead and just take care of this. We can certainly go and look at 2016 without having it interfere with moving forward.
so, Mr. Chairman, my concern is this, when we did the one in 2016, and I got it, not everybody was on board with that process, but I think the process was pretty thorough, and we all had pretty extensive discussion and analysis of those numbers. And I know he met personally with me and my staff, but more importantly, the end product, we had a lot of backup data to get to those numbers that were on that spreadsheet in 2016. This one, whether it's all 100% good or whether there's errors in it, right now, I think it's unclear what process, backup data, all that stuff is there. And I think it makes sense to let department heads take a crack at this thing with more data, more detail, more explanation of like that question I have on the methodology. So I understand next Monday is, your goal is what next Monday? To have a preliminary budget decision, is that right? And then we basically are waiting for mills and all those things to come in. So that would be my request. I think there's a question on this methodology and this data, and I mean, I'd be happy to work with you guys or anybody else to go through it. I'm not an accountant, but I think that basic question needs to be answered in order for us to know we're not gonna redo this thing. We don't wanna get where we are and then redo this thing for the entire month of August. So that's my request.
So would you be inclined to think that if we took this and sent this to Dick Larson, as Michelle prepared it, and then he comes back and says that that's where it should be at?
Well, so what I understand is you guys took his formula and his, whatever baseline he had, and you said, apply this for the new numbers. Is that accurate? So I think even before we deal with him, I think just deal with someone walking us through, here are the numbers, here are the counties, here are the positions that we looked at. Because that's what I don't understand, is how some of those positions are relatively consistent with what the previous one was, and some of them are very much inconsistent. That indicates to me that either there's something wrong with the methodology or we need to understand the methodology better. So maybe we can do that internally before we even, spend money on Mr. Larson.
When?
I just went up and asked Michelle. She said, all I did, and she agrees, this is not a wage matrix. The only thing she did was took the base salary and added 2.5, 2.5, and 2.1. It's not a wage matrix. She also said that she's never been to formal training on how to do a wage matrix. So, this is my issue. This is all we're doing is just adding cost of living, is all it's done. It has nothing to do with market adjustment or market analysis. When you open the door to market analysis, it has to be market analysis, it has to be consistent. Because changing a number based upon cost of living doesn't change with the wage evaluation for that particular job title across the state of Montana. Plain and simple. Like I said, that document right there isn't worth the paper it's written on, at all. Because it's just, and she did it, I got her email, I did this just to see where we're at for starting salaries based upon these three things. It wasn't meant to be brought to the commissioners, nor was it, or it was supposed to be used for commissioners, it was not supposed to be brought out into the public. Her own words. So, back to the trust. If you want me to trust you, then you gotta quit lying to me. Okay? Plain and simple. I'm always upfront and honest with you guys, I'm very forthcoming with you guys, and you guys keep trying to sneak shit around my back. I'm a trained criminal investigator, been doing it 22 years, and when it doesn't look right and it doesn't sound right, I'm gonna figure out what it is. So don't think, by any chance, that I'm gonna slip and miss something when it comes to this. I can read just like everybody else can. Are we clear? I'm very frustrated right now on somebody trying to pull the wool over my eyes and trying to be dishonest.
The other concern I have is that it's not on the agenda, and I think this is a big enough issue that it should be an agenda item.
I call for the question. This is ridiculous. This is part of an accountant's job, certainly an HR administrator. Yes, she has had training on this from Dick. This is a tool. It is public domain. It is for the public as well as staff and supervisors. It is a tool. How you use a tool certainly has a bearing on it. This is managerial. I didn't even think it needed to be approved, but when we learned that some people were using a worksheet and it caused an awful lot of upset last week as well, it seemed smart, and Michelle is the one that asked us, and Debbie also last week, to approve this so that we were all on the same page. It's for clarity. So I call for the question.
I guess I have a question, do we know, is this the page that Aaron was using?
We don't know for sure, but I think so. When I look at the numbers and run the numbers, it looks like that is what she's using, but we need to verify and clarify it with her. If she's using another page, then we need to make sure that she's using the same one that we all are. Otherwise, we're gonna have more upset, more miscommunication with people not understanding because they're pulling numbers from another source. This is just in the interest of transparency and good communication. It's that simple.
So Corey, did you want department heads to review this then, or did you
I
want?
mean, yeah, I think it affects them and affects their, not them as much, but it certainly affects their employees. And the concerns, the questions I have, I'm sure others have those same questions. And if we're not clear that this affects the ongoing union negotiations, I mean, it's not gonna kill us to take another week on this thing and put it on the agenda. It really should be on the agenda.
Franklin, where are you at?
Like I said a little while ago, I was against this Dick Larson review in 16, and I'm still against what's taking place right now.
Well, what about the question before you? Or
No,
do you guys, do you wanna do it today, or do you want, our request is that you give us time to review this in more detail.
well, probably should go on, but I'm not changing my mind on it, whether it's, chances are if it's next week or if it's now, I'm not gonna be in favor of it.
And every department head has had it.
I would prefer that we table this until next week, until we make sure what sheet Aaron is working with. If Aaron has this one, then I don't have a problem working with it, but if Aaron has a different one from 2016, and this is the new one without any adjustments. And I kind of agree with Corey, that some of these things are way over from what they were before, now we're above what they were.
Show me which one.
Well, these ones that are at 100, this is 111 to 113.
I bet that
This one's
if
at
I,
103,
okay, stop on one. Let me pull out my calendar or calculator.
administrative assistant sheriff. deputy sheriff is.
Well, now those we
113.
can't really address because they're under the bargaining agreement. So that's one of the reasons that we need to have something that we're all on the same page with. So
Okay,
pick one
the
that's not protected by the
detention
bargaining.
transfer officer,
I think that's also bargaining agreement.
so we can't have anything out of bargaining agreement.
Well, we haven't been able to address those because of the bargaining agreement, so it's, you wanna just read the numbers then?
Victim witness advocate would be the next one,
Okay,
to 117.
okay, what I need to do is just figure out the math of figuring out the percentage.
And this is my point, and I think this is something that we should.
Oh, it's not, it's just my, figuring out which number you divide by which number to come up with a percentage. It's just the math formula, it's not at all the structural formula. Okay, so in 2016, the victim witness advocate was making 117% of median.
Is that what it says on the 2016
Correct.
schedule?
What I did is I took what the median is, which is $17 an hour, divided 1995 into that and came up with 117%.
Well, so the other thing that happened with that is I disputed the classification of that job and the duties that were in there. Because it didn't affect the current wage she was at, and particularly because we were doing a grant, I talked to, I don't remember, I think Debbie, and she said, okay, so just so you know, it's not gonna change her wages, this might be something that you wanna relook at if we do this in the future. I understand it's not gonna affect Brooke right now, but someday if she's gone and we're hiring a new person, I'd like a chance to address that classification of her position and her duties.
That doesn't change adopting the tool.
Well, it does,
So
because
give
they
me
moved
another
her to
one,
a different
Mike.
category.
Another one that you think changed or somebody challenged that it changed.
Public health Whitners,
Is that in number 5, grade 5?
since it's grade 5, yes.
That's at 107.5% of median. Is
No,
that the same?
This one's at 104.
All right. Which stands to reason because you've updated. If we don't update and we keep going by 2016, those other counties go down because we don't take into account their COLAs, and we go up. So now you've got a really skewed document that doesn't give you the answers anymore. The reason that Jim Nyes and Dick Larson have a formula for updating the tool is that when Broadwater County has a COLA increase, we're comparing with the same counties also with a COLA increase. That's what that's all about. So in a perfect world, all counties' wages float up together. We know that's not the case, and that's why you reevaluate it years
Because some
4
of
or
these counties
6.
didn't give COLAs.
Actually, I think all of them did last year. I think there were only two counties that didn't give COLAs. Lewis and Clark doesn't give COLAs, they actually do market adjustments throughout their staff on an annual basis. They can do that, they have the staff for it, they're a huge county. $139 million a year, I think. We're quite a ways below that. So we do it like the smaller counties. You want to give another one? And we can look at the bargaining unit ones. They won't be changed because we weren't allowed to change them with the bargaining agreement.
What is number 6, the chief deputy treasurer?
That is based on MCA, and that's 10% of the treasurer. It's kind of like the sheriff's office deputies. All deputies are at 10, well, that are not sheriff's office are 10% of the elected official.
Maximum.
In this county, they are, yeah,
But I'm saying that the law says they can be no more than 90% of their bosses.
correct. But in Broadwater County, they're at 10% up.
So is your grade 5 equipment operator still 104? or is that where we were at before?
Equipment operator.
Grade 5.
Which one? Grade 5, I'm sorry, I was in 6. Equipment operator. I show, 2092. 105. 104.6.
And he's at minimum maximum of 2166, or these are 18.
Right, so ours is, for 16 was 2092.
I would like to table this for a while and come back to these when we get done with these people.
I'm agreeable to that, but I do think we need to have this by this afternoon so that we don't just put off a union negotiation. And I would be happy to maybe sit down with Debbie and Michelle at that point.
If we can do that, that would work.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll table this for right now. So we will move on to 11:30. Or 11 o'clock, Nicole Brown.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I have been working with Bernadette Swenson and I have 4 copies here, sorry. And John and Mary Heineman on this boundary relocation in Springville. And I think we may have a workable plan. Corey, I'll show you mine if you want, after I go through this. So I met with Mary and Bernadette last week. And we talked this over, and I think where we kind of got sidelined is we were looking at the number of lots that they own. To back up, you all recall the situation, right? I guess I don't need to explain all of that. Okay. So instead of looking at these Springville as lots, we started looking at them as buildable sites. Because in Springville, you can't put a home on each lot and have a septic and drain field. If you have a central system, you can, but for an individual septic system, drain field, and well, you have to have 5 lots. So when we started looking at it as in buildable locations, we came up with 7 buildable locations. And so what you have here is a progression. This is just a proposal from Bernadette on how to get to the end result, which would be phase 4 in your packet here. So you see here, this is where we would end up with 7 buildable lots. Each of these documents in the middle, I'm sorry, all the way, yeah, to the end, if you go to the very last page. You'll see here we have 7 buildable lots. So they're starting with, in Springville here, this block 19, 20, 21, 22, they have 7 buildable locations. Through boundary location, they would still end up with 7 buildable lots. I know there was some discussion on fire and roads, and if they were to market these lots in Springville as is, there's no provision for them, there's no requirement for them to build the roads, there's no requirement for them for fire. So we're really ending with the same situation, but I believe actually better for the health of the land. Instead of cramming all of those 7 septic drain fields and wells into the Springville location, they're moving them north onto this property, basically to preserve the health of the land in Springville and those folks that live there already, their wells and their septic system. So instead of looking at, what I'd like you to do, I guess, instead of looking at these as lots, consider them building locations. So we're ending with the same thing that we're beginning with. To get to this end result here, we'd have to go through each of these different boundary locations. So this would be the first one, where we'd take 5 lots out of 21 and relocate them to this area, 20 and 19. Same thing, these are all 5 lots. Actually 19 is, I believe, 7 lots. They would then do a second boundary location to move amended 21A and 21B. So they're still not splitting anything, they're simply moving those boundaries, and they're taking some more lots from 21, buildable locations, but also, you know, lot lines from 21 and 20, and going through each of these phases. So it would be a 4-phase process through surveying and boundary location to get to that end. They would all still go through DEQ for their approved location for septic drain field well.
Can I chime in? Yep,
Yep.
and we still plan on building any roads that need to be done and putting power in, and there's one other thing. And as far as I'm concerned, if we can, we'll pay the fire fees when we sell the lots, we're willing to do that too. Or would you call it a donation at that time or what, but we would do that?
Which there would be no requirement for them to do that, but if that's something that they would be agreeable to, I think that that's good as well. When we talked about it this morning, because I met again with John and Mary and Bernadette, some of the concerns that Mako land use attorney had was the lack of public participation. So if we did make this an agenda item, similar to how it was put on the agenda today, it is given public notice. However, there's no real requirement for public participation in a boundary location. But my perception of this, you know, the concerns were, one, is Springville a platted, or is it a subdivision? And the AG's opinion states, a platted city does not constitute a platted subdivision for purpose of applying the section regarding the 5 boundary locations in a subdivision. So that's the AG's opinion. So with Springville being a city, a platted city, I don't believe that.
A question, so on each of these options, I know they're all slightly different, but
Mhm.
the intention is to, that would remain one, or that would be subdivided into multiple?
This is phase one, and then there's phase two, and the ending, the last page is what it will end up looking like.
So they wouldn't be subdivided, so that phase 1, that would be the first survey that would create those 3 lots. And then they would come back with phase 2 and move some more lots, but only buildable locations, and turn them into, move them out, I guess, I shouldn't say turn them out, move them out to be greater parcels.
Mhm.
It's either 7 buildable lots on 3 acres, or 7 buildable lots on like 40.
Almost 50.
Is it almost 50?
Yeah.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, on page 1, the very skinny, 19A from block,
19.
thank you, I have my cheaters here, but I just don't wanna put them on. That's okay with the boundary relocation, even though it's against our subdivision regulations,
Correct.
because it's just a boundary relocation, right? Okay. So, the AG's opinion, did you, clarify with Tara what her counter opinion, or does she agree with that?
I have an email, and I did clarify also with Tara that I could make these emails public, so just for the record. Let me find where it was, I should have highlighted it in here, but this was an email conversation that I had. Regarding that AG's opinion. Okay, so I'm just going to read this because I don't wanna paraphrase. So this is from an email from Tara DePew, April 26th, to me and Brian Hopkins. And this is just a snippet from her email. It says, "The findings could be, as Colleen points," Colleen is Colleen Dowdall, I believe is how you say her name?
I
And
believe so,
she's, the Heideman's attorney. "Those findings could be, as Colleen points out, that this is a very old platted town site that predates the 1972 Montana Constitution, wherein Montana has a very strong right of public participation, and that the platted town site is similar to a platted city, which the AG's opinion states is not a subdivision." So she recognizes this AG's opinion, that Springville is not a subdivision.
And my last question, Crystal, planner from Lewis and
Mhm.
Clark County, had sent an email, I don't have it with me, but she mentioned boundary jumping, which it looks like this does not do.
Correct, and that's why it would be in phases.
And what was her other issue? Does this have any outstanding issue with Crystal?
I don't recall off the top of my head, the lot jumping and, you know, the use of the county's roadway, or it's not even owned by the county, but the roadway there. Those were the things that I had noted. Were her concerns, you know, being from Lewis and Clark County, why they may not allow this. But that's why we went with phases, so there was no lot jumping.
Okay,
You know, instead of just going to the end result of number one and jumping those lots, if you will, we take phase 1, 2, 3, 4, and move those boundary lines north and east as necessary instead of jumping.
all right, so with the roads, which is the big issue, did you guys talk about an MOU, a contract, anything signed? Or what's the proposal there?
Well, we proposed to use BSE for the roads. He's never got back to me on a bid, so I was thinking about doing it myself. I have a gravel pit there, so I wanna use my gravel for the bays. Hopefully save a little money there, but, and then time-wise, I'll be able to get it done quicker.
So it'll be a
Because they're
private
so busy
road
right
for
now, I don't
public
think I'll
use?
get them in time.
Okay, yeah,
But BSE's not out of the question, I'm just saying, he hasn't gotten back to me on any bids or anything, so, you know, if I know I can do this, I wanna get started on the roads as soon as possible.
we built our own too, so
Mhm.
I know it can be done.
Right,
I will say it's not up to par for county standards, but if it's a private road for public use, then
well, they're all gonna be county spec as far as width and
perfect.
ditches, and the only thing that wouldn't be county spec is maybe my gravel, I don't know. But I haven't had it inspected,
Okay,
so. But BSE did look at it and said it was good gravel. Brandon, is it Brandon? Yeah.
all right, so are you good with, of course, this conversation will be in the minutes. Do you have a proposal of any kind of an MOU or a contract on the road question, or what is your thinking on?
Well, John did
That
state, you know, that they would be willing to sign something. Obviously, you know, we'd have to look at this contract. I wouldn't just put it in front of you and make you sign it, but for the construction of the roads, there is a possibility that there would not even be any roads other than the ones within the actual platted town site of Springville. They can accomplish this by using driveways. You know, their end plan. A driveway can serve no more than 2 lots, but they can accomplish this through just construction of driveways and not actually constructing roads. And so that's how it was reconfigured a bit, because, you know, the public participation was a concern, the road and the fire. For what I had gleaned out of those commissioner meetings, you know, that we'd held, those were the concerns.
I have a question. I guess, why are you wanting to avoid the subdivision process? Why don't we just do that? Because this thing, you know, I feel like we talked about this, I've talked to, you know, my perception of,
So I have these lots that I have up there. There is, right there, there's 7 buildable lots. So if I subdivide, then I can go ahead and put 7 houses up here also. Why would I wanna do that? Why wouldn't I just take these lots and use them as I have them and go ahead and move them?
You're talking about the 4 here.
Yes, there's 7 there.
Right.
There's actually, if there's 10, 20.
Those are blocks. There's-
Right.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I use them and move them out? Why wouldn't you want me to do that so I don't have the possibility of using these lots the way they are and taxing Springville with those lots, those blocks?
No, I understand all that. I'm not telling you change your goal here at the end. I'm saying why don't you wanna just go through the subdivision process or to do this?
Because basically legally, I thought we didn't have to when we bought the land. And with subdivisions, all your costs are up front. And this way here, I can,
We can get started.
get something sold, so I have money to do it.
Okay, but I mean, in terms of if we have a subdivision process, then the roads, we have, by regulation, we know what we're all getting. Those things are pretty well set. This process is it's kind of like we're cobbling together a plan that may ultimately be a good plan, but I still think it is an open legal question, I know Tara does too, as to whether you can do a boundary relocation to this.
Right.
And so, I guess I'm wondering why we don't go back to a process that we all know.
Well, in this
is gonna
way here, we
assure-
don't, we can put driveways in and not roads, we don't need roads,
Well, I don't know, this one serves 3 lots,
does it?
this one serves 3 lots, so I don't know how you get,
This
That was
is,
just one possibility.
That 22B can come in from a different location. So where it says, if it doesn't say.
okay, so I'm looking at the arrows, the arrows show 3 and 3, so, I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
It seems like we're going out of our way to avoid the process that we know works. And, you know, I've reviewed the stuff that Tara has sent me, and, I think her skepticism as to whether you can do these boundary relocations, I think it's merited, so that'd be my recommendation.
And we've done this in other locations too.
But to this extent?
No, not to that
Yeah,
extent, no,
so
no.
this is a whole animal.
But to where, someone has a small piece of property or a large piece of property, and those boundaries are fluid in the sense as long as you're not creating any new lots. And in fact, they're getting rid of quite a few lots. The Heinemans are through this process. So to me, it makes sense. I do understand what you're saying, Corey, that, it does look like a subdivision. It has aspects of a subdivision. You've got roadway, possibly driveway, but no provision for the county to enforce the construction of the roadway.
Yeah, we
But there's no
also-
provision for the county to construct the roadway in Springville. And so you're putting all of those impacts into that tiny little area. Just like Mary said, you've got 7 buildable sites in roughly 3 acres, or you can move those 7 buildable sites to 50 acres to alleviate the stress.
Right, no, I'm not saying force these guys to build houses in these tiny little 100-year-old lots. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying this is a great end goal. I mean, people are gonna love to live there. These are gonna be really valuable properties. But we have a subdivision process for a reason, to protect the process, protect you, protect the buyers, protect the fact that at some point a fire truck's gonna have to go up that road, or driveway, whatever it is, or a law enforcement officer is, and it needs to be where they can rely on that road, it's mapped. We don't have 25-year-long debates right now over whether a road is a public road or a private road. I mean, it seems to me that those chickens are gonna come home to roost at some point if we don't follow the process correctly. That's my concern.
Well, and what you're doing there is forcing me to sell some of these little lots in Springville because I can't afford to do the subdivision process the way it's required.
But I mean, anyone that's got a plan to develop property, I mean, the county's not forcing you to do anything. But if everybody that comes in has kind of a new way of doing things that goes around the subdivision process, then the result is we don't have a subdivision process, and it's there specifically to prevent some of the ills that I just talked about.
In
That would be
an
my-
aspect, we are preventing somebody from taking those lots and building on those lots by moving them.
Right.
And that way, if we were to sell these lots, somebody could put 7 houses on there. If we move them out, we're taking away that part and not taxing Springville.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, and you also would
I,
potentially
I,
have.
I also paid when I bought this property, I came to the county and I went to a surveyor before I even purchased it, and they said, yes, you can move out those lots. So we based our purchase price on those lots and being able to move them, not on subdividing and selling these lots. Our idea was to move them out onto the property, and that's why we bought that property. So I don't wanna sell these lots separately and put 7 houses on there. I wanna move them out and make this plan that's better for me and for the county. And put the road in there, pay the fire fees. I mean, I'm not doing anything different, I'm just getting it done faster, and I'm taking these lots and doing what I initially was told I could do.
So that's the thing I don't understand, is you're still doing the fees, the roads, all those things. I don't understand what costs you're avoiding that
Well,
are,
it's the
there's gonna be
the
some
upfront
fees,
stuff,
right?
yeah.
But there isn't gonna be major costs you're avoiding, because those roads and some of that infrastructure is gonna be heavy, you know. those are-
Creating that subdivision book, cause I don't have the time to do it, is going to cost me a lot of money, getting all that paperwork together and doing all that. It's not the roads, it's not the power, it's the time and effort to do that whole subdivision book.
Mhm.
And the time, cause I don't have the time to do that.
Understood.
And the initial plan, when we bought this, was to move these lots out and make it a better for us, of course. I mean, I'm going to benefit from this, but better for Springville also.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think if the end state of this plan, is people are gonna like this property. And rather than being in those old, you know, different.
Right, and
standard property
those
lines.
neighbors don't want those houses built there, because it's already congested up there.
No, I'm not in any way disputing the qualitative
Okay.
issue. It's, I'm trying to figure out
Well, if it makes sense,
the lurking dangers of us trying this. Secondly, I agree with Tara, I'm not sure that it's legally allowed to do this many boundary. Sure, you can do one and probably, I mean, if you just do it by yourself, you could do 21 and block 21A, that'd probably be fine. But when you end up with what that end result is, I think a judge is gonna look at this and go, well, this is a subdivision, no matter what you call it, and no matter how many phases it took for you to get there, that's clearly what has happened here. That's my perception. And the only time it's gonna hurt, and it's gonna hurt you, is when you have a guy or a lady that buys 21A, right?
That one we're keeping.
Or 21B, and then they sue you because of something that wasn't provided that was required through the subdivision process. They sue you, they sue us, they sue your surveyor, because we neglected something that law and our regulations say you should do.
well, what about block 21? I mean, let's say I sell half of block 21, now they have no place to put septic, aren't they gonna do the same thing? Or they don't have,
Do you mean the original one way down in the?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, so there's no roads there, there's no room to put a backup septic, I mean, I got the same situation, so when I have the situation it is now, and I'm moving it out and making the same situation I have, but I believe it's better because they have more room, they have room for the secondary septics.
Mhm.
To me, this makes sense for everybody.
I agree, I think the
The
whole
other
thing
thing
makes
is
sense
that we
other
have-
than the process.
I'm not saying we'll ever sell these, cause we wanna live up there too, but eventually we will sell property.
Sure.
And then this is gonna become an issue again, these little lots, even if we do subdivide and we still have these lots. I mean, it's like money in the bank, you know, for retirement or whatever, and that's kinda why we're doing this, is so for retirement, sell a lot. So, but we could sell all of this, and I'm not saying we build on the little lots, somebody
Right.
might in the future.
And the reality is, a lot of us, and we get here and we inherit whatever happened 100 years ago that affected that terrain. And you can only go, well, this is what it is, what can we make it into? And I think what you're trying to make it into is awesome. I'm concerned the process is gonna eventually come back and hurt us. When I say that, I mean all of
I think
us.
we're fixing a really big problem up there and alleviating a problem that exists there now. And we're not making any more buildable lots.
Corey, what do you think if we were to put together either an MOU or some type of a contract that the county and the Heinemans would sign, that they would build the roads to county subdivision road standards? Because the roads, how many road issues are we dealing with right now? Roads are always, roads are always a big issue. So that to me seems to be the one concern, if you will, through this whole boundary relocation situation. You know, I'm thinking we can,
So, I guess my thoughts are, is number one, two concerns, what would be the subdivision fee to this? Is that a concern?
No.
What's the fee to that's not, I mean, it's some money, I don't know how much it is, what would it be?
right, I'm just doing the math in my head, but with 7, you're looking at $2,200.
So that's not the
County fees.
big ticket item, is it?
No.
The timeline, that's the big concern, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, we've been at this for 7 months and we have gotten no further than when we started.
So had you initiated the subdivision 7 months ago, where would we be today? You'd be selling lots.
You'd have 10 lots here, plus I would have another 7 to sell up there. I mean, I can do subdivision, and I can sell these lots, I mean, the idea is, okay, either I make these lots, or I still start selling off Springville lots to do the subdivision.
And how many, you have more in some.
Yeah, we have approximately 25 building sites up there. So I will sell off 25 building sites up there to do the subdivision, and then you're gonna have 7 here, and then you're gonna have another 10.
And the other question I have is, if we do the boundary relocation, why is would the county get sued? They're not responsible for the roads or anything because we didn't have to go through subdivision.
For violating the Montana Land Use Act and not enforcing subdivisions when the subdivision process.
And trust me, I'm not arguing with you, you're a county attorney, I'm just me.
This is an area that is, I've relied a lot on others because it's not an area that I've dealt with much. And that's my concern, is Tara's looking at it like, I don't know about this. And I'm not gonna really override her. I'm not sure that she has the full information, I don't know if she has the current information.
No,
It's something we
I
can
do
certainly
not.
sit down and spend some time with her on, but I will disregard her skepticism at peril. I'll tell you that.
So do you think it would be beneficial, or I guess probably to follow up with Tara with this plan and say, hey, this is what they want to do?
Yeah,
Does she
let's
see
do
any
that,
issues
but
with
I would,
that?
yeah, I mean, the county commission, and just tell you that I think you're better served. I'll do that, and if she says, great, and there's no concerns, that argument that this town predated the 72 Constitution and therefore it's exempt from some of those regulatory requirements, that's a great argument from a lawyer who's hired to make that argument. I don't know that that's an argument that's would prevail, and so that puts us back where we were saying.
I believe it's in the county regulation, or the subdivision regulations also,
Which,
for boundary relocation
right, but,
within, subdivision predating or after 1973.
saying that this only applies to subdivisions after 73?
Within a platted subdivision, in the subdivision, the Broadwater County subdivision regulations, it specifies subdivisions prior to 73.
And this being a town that, I mean,
Right,
how
that's
much
a Attorney General opinion.
Right,
So it was just two tidbits. And one thing I'd like to, just to bring forth too, that yes, there is the subdivision regulations, but MCA does have exemptions from subdivision regulations. So I know this is an unusual case. Not everyone owns 7 buildable sites next to, 50 to 300 acres, that they could do this. So this is kind of, one of those things we just don't see very often, and that's why we're coming forward, because this is out of an ordinary boundary relocation. But there is the exemption for boundary relocation within MCA. So I mean, to say, okay, maybe they could do 2 or 3, but not the 7, where do we draw that line?
Right.
If you could, when talking to Tara, also ask about the contract idea you had
Mhm.
regarding roads and ag exempt and fire. This, in my opinion, is an opportunity for us somehow. We have the same thing in Toston and Raidersburg, matchbook size lots that perhaps by doing something like this could make those viable and actually, help those communities. So if there's something we can do, you answered all my questions affirmatively. Maybe there's an opportunity here.
Alright, so let's meet with Tara, we can even do it this week if we need to.
Okay. Perfect.
And, I mean, if she has like great levels of comfort with it, then I'll get on board.
Okay.
And we just need to figure out what MOUs or agreements on roads, or whatever needs to be put in place. If we're still where we were of, this doesn't look like it fits, then we'll have to probably come back to that. Sound good?
Perfect, okay.
Would that be able to be like next week? I know, the kind of hurry up and wait. Could we get that on the agenda?
Yeah,
If
I
that
think
works?
if Tara's schedule is open, I'll go make that phone call to her right
And
now.
is she in Bozeman?
Livingston.
Livingston? Okay, so I had meetings in Bozeman this week, and I could just drive over if I have to, or we could be on the phone with you or something.
Perfect, okay. Yeah, to where we can, I mean, my schedule's open and Corey's is, but we just, with Tara, to make sure that she's available this week, but I don't see any reason why we can't put it on for next Monday.
And I'll just request, Mr. Chairman, that we postpone this agenda item to next Monday. Done?
Super. Yeah, I feel that this is a good plan. I do understand, Corey's concerns, and, we're still ending with the same number of building sites, not lots. And so I think what the Heinemans are doing are actually, it's a benefit to the community, to that area, so.
I think so too. And they're nice big lots, which we don't have many of, and from what I hear, there's quite an ask with realtors for.
Alright.
Will you shoot us an email when you have some answers?
Absolutely.
All right, be good to have that before Monday.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm getting a little more comfortable because they keep coming back.
I appreciate your tenacity.
It's not on the agenda, but I need to schedule a closed door meeting with you guys for a litigation update at some point in the next week or two. Whenever you can figure that. It's maybe 30 minutes or less.
ask Debbie and Michelle to come down for that, or are
Yes,
you
I
not
believe we
ready?
do,
What's that?
yes.
All right, I'll go and grab them.
Good.
So I move, so in the winter time, it's pretty much like a day shift. And in the summertime, we try to bump it up. But to save money, because we don't have a part-time guy, at 6 hours every Saturday and Sunday, that is extra through, Memorial Day to Labor Day, what looks like Memorial Day to Labor Day. So I use the
This is the place for your signature on this.
So I can move it to where
How you been?
Good, and yourself?
Good.
stay a little bit more
You
days.
do your change of command yet?
Yesterday.
All right, how'd it go?
Good.
All right.
6 hours.
All done. Told them don't lose anything till after 10 a.m. Then after that, it's a new guy's problem.
Good enough. So you gonna go like to headquarters or where you headed?
Yeah, I'll go stay headquarters for a while and then, I don't know, see. That's not a place you wanna stay very long. Get out of there.
That's a new lucky guy.
His name's Sean Hardy. He's been with us. He's my number 2 guy for most of my command and he's been with us a long time. He's good, really good. Yeah? Yeah, we had a busy 2 weeks. A few nights I didn't sleep at all. Running, living in the dust. Lots of fun.
Good.
Guys have a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. He's one of those kind of guys who's always